no one can predict it. No one could have predicted the iPhone in '07 would have changed everything, but we were all kind of like, this is an interesting device. And now we look back
Yeah.
and say, probably one of the biggest changes we had in our generation, in what happened in industry. People's ability to be resilient. So I think not every entrepreneur is created equal, and resilience with some common sense a little bit, like not haphazard resilience where you'll do it until the dying end. And I've watched many entrepreneurs do that, end up with a 0.5% of their company. And all right, that wasn't the smart way to do it, but doing it with resilience and picking the right people. So in my seat, I'm like, is that the right person that's going to go through the war and is going to do the hard things? And are they recognizing timing? And there's a little bit of luck in timing. So I do believe what people get caught up in is, and no one ever should get caught up in this, is falling in love with the product or service.
Welcome to the Your Seat at the Table podcast with your hosts, Idea Monkey Mike Maddock and ringleader John Tobin. We're two founders, a serial entrepreneur and a billion-dollar operator, who talk to leaders about how, when, and why they made their most pivotal decisions in life. Join us as we share wisdom, mistakes, and a few laughs, learning from the brightest minds in business today. Okay, lucky us, we have my friend Alan with us today, and Alan Ezeir is, Brian Wish, our mutual buddy, put us together. See if I get this right. You are the founder of Circle Square Cap. You are the founder, I believe, of Sipping Life Tequila. I want to talk about that. One of my favorite drinks. Founder of Crypto Portfolio, founding member of a founding member of a YPO chapter. Both of us got to do that, which is fun. So you are an entrepreneur that is now investing in yourself and investing in a lot of other businesses. So I'm keen to understand what wisdom you have after seeing so many businesses succeed and fail. But before we get to that, thanks for coming and give us a little story about how you went from, I think you started in domain registration.
Yeah.
How'd you start and how'd you get here?
Well, appreciate it, Mike. Thank you for having me on. I think when I think of where it all started, I go back to college where I didn't feel like I fit in, but I found my people there in an entrepreneurial group called the Southern California Entrepreneurship Academy. And it was this is like late 80s. And I realized I just wanted to transact in business, buy something for one price, sell it for another, add value, and did a lot of things on the campus of UCLA where I was selling T-shirts, selling computer services, got involved in promoting spring break trips, and I was the one that would get up at 5 a.m. and back then you would actually post flyers on billboards. It's like or on kiosks. So I think it all started then, and I wanted to graduate. And ironically, UCLA did not have a undergrad business school. They have a graduate business school, and I wasn't going to stay in school for that much longer. And that's when my entrepreneurial journey began, and thanked my parents for not putting me in debt and said, we're not going to get a job. And that was a moment where my dad was like, what are you doing? And my mom's like, I'll support you any way I can. And that's when it all started. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it seems like it started before that because you were already making your own money. And
yeah,
do you think that if I had to pick one seat for an entrepreneur to start with, it would be the rainmaker seat, because you have to have sales to have a business.
Yeah.
Do you agree? I mean, like,
yeah.
The rest you can figure out as long as you have cash flow and sales. Would that be the first horse you'd pick?
100%. I think people forget that, and there is cases that's not the case, but it's very it's not as often, right? I can name a couple ideas that are like, oh, it didn't have to be a salesperson, but you came up with something that was like too easy to sell, or the timing, or whatever it is. But in the end, I think I ask everyone, go find something that you can make, buy, and then enhance it and sell it for more. Or find a distribution channel that didn't find that thing that you made or bought, and
That's interesting.
and sell it. I mean, in the end, some of my mentors would say when I was in the stage of buying companies, he's like, look at their distribution closely, because if it's hard to create that distribution, that's the asset. The product and services are what move across the table because there's a demand, but what's really the moat? What's creating why do they exist? And whether you're starting a business or buying a business, you have to see those things. But I agree with you. The first seed an entrepreneur needs to do is feel comfortable with taking something that they made or bought and selling it to somebody that needs it.
It's interesting you should mention distribution and have a tequila business, because what it reminds me of is we took on Old Style, which is an old beer brand, years ago. And then I started an investment fund, which was a complete disaster, by the way. I had no right being in the investment business. But we don't have to get into that.
Yeah.
Many entrepreneurs.
The failures are good.
Some don't, yeah.
Yeah, the failures are good.
We looked at a few alcohol brands, and what I learned from startups, what I learned from Old Style was distribution is everything, and it is so hard to crack that code. So, but let's not go there. We'll get you. So you get out of school.
Yeah, and
what happened?
Yeah, and look, I'll skip over the probably half a dozen businesses I started, but one of them was critical because it taught me that I really loved what I was doing, which was I had a T-shirt business, which a lot of kids in school end up by having a T-shirt business, but I had a distribution with small rock bands in Hollywood. I grew up in Los Angeles. And I would make 144 T-shirts for them. I'd make a couple bucks a T-shirt. Maybe I'd make $300 a sale. And one of my bands got signed, or one of the bands that I was working with gets signed. They need 5,000 shirts delivered to Canada where they're playing in a show. And I'm making $3 a shirt at that point. And when you're just out of college and someone cuts you a check and your profit's $15,000, you're like, whoa, I've made it here. Unfortunately, that was the only sale I got from them because the company that signed them said, well, we have a distribution company that handles merchandise. So who's this Alan guy? And
yeah,
it was they're still not around, but it's the Electric Love Hogs. And I'll never forget. I still have their CD, and my claim to fame was I got to grab the CD, and they have the credits on there, and I was, they put me on the credits, and great guys, rock band music back in the early 90s. But in any case, that taught me, and there's a lot of lessons I learned because the company I worked with to get the T-shirts done went out of business. Then I literally went to the factory and was silk screening myself. I learned how do you face adversity, and I loved it. Like it was 3 a.m. trying to figure out how to fulfill this order, and I was in my element. So I was in my zone. And then I went through this discovery process because I always kept my costs down. So I always tell entrepreneurs, if you can put a roof over your head and food in your mouth at a very low cost and not get caught up in the expenses of life, you have space to find things. And I was really good at that at a young age, and it was something my father taught me. So I lived pretty meager where all my friends were, having their first jobs and being able to go out to dinner. And I just didn't do that. I was just like, let's keep my costs down. And then I got into the telecom space because I saw this need. This is back when we had telecom at 20 cents a minute for a phone call, back in the 90s. And that business, I say, came at the right time where I teamed up with my college roommate in the mid-90s. And the second telecom business I had was like, hey, there's this internet thing. Why don't we just leverage this internet infrastructure to run a telecom business? And just like how AI is a big deal now, and
you're surrounded by giant companies saying, no, that's not how it's done. I'm sure you just this idea.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, well, we can buy time cheaper and look for a segment of the audience and charge them 10 cents a minute or 5 cents a minute or 3 cents a minute. And this is back when that case. And over a period of a couple of years, we built up a base of 50,000 customers that were paying us. We had 3 employees, so very AI-ish in the sense that we use the infrastructure of the internet to do billing, collections, customer service. This is before you could actually make a phone call online. So we still had a traditional phone call. So that business grew, but then it went to all you can eat. Like right now, a phone call costs nothing. And we immediately needed to pivot. And that, I think, is like kind of lesson number 2, which is, oh shit, you can be at the business at the wrong time. And we were at the tail end of an industry where you could still stay in it, but it could be very difficult. And that's how we got into the domain business, because we scoured, we were on the internet. We're like, what other internet businesses are reoccurring revenue, service-based, kind of have some uniqueness to it? And domain names were the easy transition from telephone numbers or phone calls. And that was the aha moment. And looking back at it now in 1997, 98, we were there at the right time, right place, took the chance. Couldn't do it now in 2026. It'd be very difficult. Yeah.
Question for you, Alan. You said you your college roommate became your partner.
Yeah.
And I've written a lot about the ability to pivot and how it can be like a superhero power. And for me, it's also Achilles' heel because I like to pivot too much. Like, let's change it. Let's change it. Who was it? Was it you or your partner that said, who's better at pivoting? Because one of you had to be good at follow through. One of you had to be like, okay, we figured this out. Let's scale it. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So I think if I'm to break up our skill sets, he was very good at seeing around corners and seeing what was next. And he was a programmer. I was good at the people, operations, legal, actually understanding how to do a P&L and saying, you have to make money. So, and so that, but on the pivoting question, I think we were both on the same page. I think what ended up by happening is we used to have this comment when we would get interviewed back then, is he would jump at everything. I would grab one of his legs and say, let's not jump there.
Yeah.
And then he would jump again and I'd say, not there. And then he'd jump again and I'd say, there's a good one. Let's both jump. Yeah. So I think he would jump too fast and I would now analyze it just enough and then say, okay, there's the one that has the least amount of risk. Because you can, if you take too much risk, you're gonna crash and burn.
I look back. Can you understand, or do you believe that you were really lucky finding the right partner early?
Yeah. So
many partners get together and they have the same skill. They both want to jump. Or and it doesn't work. It's so I see partners at work as like the third or fourth or fifth partner is probably not luck, but the first one, if you get that one right, man.
So Mike, you're speaking right into my heart right now because I've spent a lot of time in the last year trying to replicate that. And I've actually used AI to say, here's what happened when I was 19, 20, 25. And I have this word that I printed and it's just serendipity. And I believe it was a very serendipitous moment that I met someone that we had complementary skill sets. We had the same vision. We were young, we were ambitious, and we moved forward. Now, frankly, like after 2 decades, that partnership ended because we moved in different directions. I've been, over the last decade, because it's been a decade since that relationship, I've been trying to replicate it. And I've literally, like, my vision going forward, as when we first spoke, and I've done a lot of work on this, is I'm not actually looking for the next business. I'm looking for the next co-creator, someone that I can co-create with. And I have a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people on my desk here that have made the cut out of 20 that I've been meeting with. And eventually I'll cut that down to 3 and then 2 and maybe co-create with 2 and then see which one works. And I don't care if we sell ice cubes or AI tools. It's like, I need to find that person because I'm better when I'm co-creating with somebody. So you nailed it when you said that. So
I just sent the final transcript to a book called Your Seat at the Table. It's the same name as this podcast.
Yeah.
And it describes the 6 seats at the table: the operator, the strategist, the rainmaker, the visionary, the tech futurist, and the orchestrator.
Yeah.
And one of the chapters that is and it describes like the superhero power and blind spot of each one and how you build a team. So it's something I think about all the time. So, and I should tell you that when I speak, I actually use the phrase manufacturing serendipity.
I like it.
Yeah, like, because some people seem to be able to do it. You hear, isn't that guy lucky? Or isn't she lucky? Isn't she lucky? And then you notice that they're lucky again and again. And like,
Yeah.
luck, they're doing something.
Yeah.
Okay, so like, permission, just a quick digression. I know, because we've spoken in the past about all the different businesses you've had. I also know you have children the ages of 10 to 40, right? One of them is if I remember correctly, a sportscaster in the dreaded icy tundra of Green Bay, Wisconsin. I was a fan.
Yeah.
Even saying that.
I know.
How as a dad who is a really successful entrepreneur who is clearly willing to share wisdom, like hard earned, I've got the bruises, I've got the scars, I made a lot of mistakes, wisdom. How does that affect your parenting?
So I've learned early, and I don't know if it was just, I think it was my mother's influence on me, that you can be anything you want to be, but don't be anyone that you're not. And I respected that, because it wasn't, oh, be a lawyer, doctor, because that's a safe path, or that's a path that will give you notoriety and money, fame, whatever it may be. Find out who you are. And in the parenting side, I was very good to watch my kids' actions and then I had the opportunity to give them opportunities. And then you watch. And I had 2 children, and one's 27, is my daughter, and my son's 25, who you said is in Green Bay. And both of them picked careers that I could have told you when they were about 10, 11, 12 were very interested in. And my ex-wife now, but my wife then kind of said, hey, let's nurture this. And if they don't like it, let's let them shift. And I think not getting caught up in the, like, I did try to influence my son. I'm like, hey, traditional network television is probably not the way to go. Why don't you team up with some people and start your own channel on YouTube? And he's like, Dad, I'm not like you. I want to go get, and he said this early in life, he's like, I want to go get health insurance. And I was like, wow, okay. And I knew he was very much needed that safety net, and I just never needed it. So rather than pushing him there, I put him in front of everybody, and I figured what would stick would stick. And my daughter ended up by becoming a school teacher, and we knew that she was going that direction even before my son. So I think allowing your children space to learn, and then not trying to, you kind of give them options, but don't drag them there. With that said, my son recently came to me, and I feel like it was a mistake in my parenting. I used to play golf. I played golf for about 20 years and then just stopped because I just got less interested. And we were members of a golf club. It was close to our home. And he told me recently, he's like, Dad, I'm mad at myself for always complaining and then not wanting to go play golf with you.
Yeah.
And I pushed him a little bit, but I didn't want to like make him do something he didn't want to do. And part of me kind of wishes I pushed him a little bit further, because he now plays golf and he's like, God, I wish I had that time to learn younger. So there's a balance between going, this is better for you, versus, you got to find your way. So I can't say I did everything right. I definitely didn't do everything right.
Yes. I think that if we knew exactly what our parents did right, we would just do it, but none of us know. We do and then the other thing is, your kids can be so different from one another.
Entirely.
In the Midwest, we say you plant corn, you get corn. That's not the case in my family. My kids are pretty much opposite of me. You know, they might laugh at similar jokes, and they might, but I'm like, I've always been like, what could possibly go wrong? Let's just try it. And
Yeah.
they're very like, no,
Yeah.
no, you one step at a time. So I
Yeah.
let me
Yeah.
ask you some questions about
Fire away.
what you see, because you look at so many businesses. You might look at more businesses in a month that most people live at, look at in a lifetime. Do you see any patterns that CEOs miss, or something that they think investors care about that they really don't?
Um, what they miss. I think the one it's a good question. I'm just trying to think of things that I look for. Um, and the two things I look for is getting validation from enough resources to know the timing of that industry or product. So that's number one. I like try to go because no one can predict it. No one could have predicted the iPhone in '07 would have changed everything, but we were all kind of like, this is an interesting device. And now we look back and say '07 was probably one of the biggest changes we had in our generation, and what happened in industry. Um, uh, People's ability to be resilient. I think not every entrepreneur is created equal, and resilience with some common sense, a little bit, like not haphazard resilience where you'll do it until the dying end. And I've watched many entrepreneurs do that, end up with a 0.5% of their company, and all right, that wasn't the smart way to do it, but doing it with resilience and picking the right people. So when in my seat, I'm like, is that the right person that's going to go through the war and is going to do the hard things? And are they recognizing timing? And there's a little bit of luck in timing. So I do believe what people get caught up in is, and no one ever should get caught up in this, is falling in love with the product or service.
Yeah.
You really can't do that.
It's hard too, because you're like, we talked about being a rainmaker.
Yeah.
You need someone that is just so in, and they're a huge cheerleader and they're all in. I think there's this tension between grit and quit that is really important. Like, I have friends who are entrepreneurs and they quit so quickly. They're like, it's not going to work. Me, like, I've got a burning carnage of a business and I'm still trying to keep it going. Like, what are you doing? So like, sometimes being all about grit is worse. And people are like, nope, you got to know. So I wonder how I think you learn that over time. How do you pick that when you're investing?
So it's very difficult, because if we all knew, we would just follow a roadmap. And I got some advice, and again, this may not be as relevant, but back when I was in college, I would go to a lot of networking events, and there was one called the Association of Collegiate Entrepreneurs, ACE, and it was and this is a long time ago. And Michael Dell was a keynote speaker. This is 1988, so he was, I think they just went public, or it was early on. He had a $50 million company. He's not the way who he is now. And I remember being able to walk up to him and said, "Hey, look, I just need some direction." And he goes, "See that yellow brick road?" He goes, "Just start walking on it, because what you start today is not going to be what is going to happen tomorrow. And you need to keep Mike moving and seeing things rather than thinking about it." And I think you've got to go with your experience, information in the marketplace, and betting on somebody strictly because they had previous success is not a recipe for a win. But betting on someone that's never had it, and then betting on someone that's never done it is not a recipe for a failure. So it's like, you just got to get a sense of, do you believe in this direction and can visualize it in the future, and then say, okay, who's got the amount of grit and willingness to get it there? It's easy to everyone to bet on Elon Musk today, right? But 7-8 years ago, people were like, maybe he's a crazy guy. And now he's like,
he's saying he's a crazy guy. He just happens to be a crazy guy that's good at business.
Yeah. And then if you look back, maybe the timing of SpaceX and Tesla are like just great timing too.
Yeah,
And
so let me. I have a real, like, the best metaphor that I've heard is surfing, because you can be the best surfer in the world, and if you get
yeah,
on a lousy wave, you look like you can't surf. You can be
yeah,
an average surfer and get a great wave, and you're like, my gosh, who is that out there? That's how business is, and I think that picking the right wave at the right time makes average business people look really, really great. So I love what you're saying about
yeah.
timing.
So
Timing is, yeah,
Mike, I have a good answer for you. And you just made me think of something, is being very, like being in tune with the repetition of what you see. So if you see something like an entrepreneur repeat something that is the right direction over a period of time versus the to making mistakes, then you're like, wow, he's done it more than once. And when I mean that, not like a big win, but like an action, whatever
yeah,
action happened along the way, um, that's when you start to go, okay, I'm going to bet on that guy because there's a higher likelihood. But when they only win once, you don't go all in on that because it could have been just timing and luck. So you got to see the repetitions in someone. It's kind of like I saw consistency in relationships, right?
yeah,
Like your spouse, when they're consistent with you, you're like, oh, I've got someone that I can is predictable and consistent. Now, yeah, they go off the rails sometimes, but that's okay. But you know them. So
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
recently remarried
Mhm.
after my late wife passed, and so 4 years after. But the I went and asked permission from my wife's father for her
Mm,
name, because that's what you do, particularly in the
yeah,
South.
sure.
And he goes, "Well, you know, marriage is forever, right? You know that, right?" And I kind of looked at him like, and he goes, "Oh yeah, yeah, you do." I had a pattern that we
Yeah, yeah,
easily recognize.
yeah, yeah.
You're reminding me of the an entrepreneur in Chicago, Eric Lefkowski. He's had 5 or 6 businesses that have been pretty, like, some phenomenal businesses. And after the third one, I'm like, it's the same pattern. He is, and it's a callback to your distribution. This guy is finding inefficient distribution systems and collapsing them. Every one of his businesses, that's what he's doing. And so
Yeah.
I think, if I was an investor, I'd be like, there it is. He did it again. He's about to do it again. So that's his superhero part. It's like really, really great insight. Have you ever, backed the wrong idea because of the right CEO? You believed in someone so much that you're just like, all right, I don't see what this person's seeing, but I really believe in this person. They have a great pattern, so I'm going to back them. Has that ever happened?
Oh yeah. I've made the mistakes of falling in love with product. I've followed an entrepreneur that I didn't know, really didn't want to be back, but wanted the money, and like you just and it's hard because it takes time to get to know somebody. And sometimes you can get to know them quickly. It's kind of like when you meet somebody, you're like, wow, I feel like I've known you forever. Versus some people, you're like, I still need to get to know them because maybe I recognize something that they did that made me a little bit like unsure of who they are. So yeah, I spoke once, a friend of mine was a visiting professor at Cornell, and he said, hey, I'd love for you to share your story. And it was one of the most fascinating things. I wrote down inflection points. And I'll tell you, when you look back, on the slides, I put like a little red highlight or a green highlight, and the red was failures and green was wins. There was more failures than wins.
Yeah.
And you're like thinking to yourself, wow, but it's like the analogy, it's like if you're a baseball player and you strike out
300.
7 times and you're fine. So
And you're in the
yeah,
Hall of Fame. And that's how,
yeah,
like, that. By the way, before I
yeah.
forget the thought,
Sure,
I'm old school.
please, sir.
Inflection Points is the name of your book. That is a really, really great idea, because I suspect that there's a pattern to inflection points that
Yeah,
entrepreneurs could learn from. Like, oh, and in the West, I've always said the United States unfair competitive advantage is that we celebrate failure.
Yeah.
We don't shame our family. Here it's like, oh, your kid's an entrepreneur. Wow, that's really great. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, crashed 2 or 3 businesses, but he still had it. Unbelievable. Where,
Yeah.
in other countries, your family won't speak to you ever again. Yeah. Is there something? So you invest in a company.
Yeah.
Is there something that just pisses you off? Like all of us have lost lots of money by investing in companies.
True.
When do you get angry?
I get, I don't, I maybe don't get, when I say I get angry, I get upset when there's an opportunity with someone, I see such skill in them and they look for a way to get one over on you. Like they manipulate the situation and with a little bit of greed. And I know, I have to remind myself people are out for themselves, but maybe I'm in this for the joy of the journey. And I love the wins at the end. But, when I see someone going, your failure or me getting something on you is my win, I get upset with myself going, God, I wish I could teach you that's like, if you start thinking energetically, that's just like bad for your soul, right? It's like,
around too.
Yeah. And
around.
Yeah. And it's frustrating because you see their skill level. Like, I'll use an example of a person I don't know, but his public persona is to do that. And it's Mark Zuckerberg, right? You hear the stories. I don't know if it's true or not, but it seems like he really pushed people down on the way up. But it could have been that he had the reason to. Maybe there was real reasons for doing so. Like, I just, when I hear it, and I don't know Mark, never met him. But when I hear the stories, I think about my own stories with people where I'm like, God, if you just worked with me, it would have been a lot better than if you tried to play that game. So, yeah.
And that my trigger too is when things go south and I wasn't asked for help. Like I could have helped you. Like, it feels dishonest. Like I'm not here. It's okay. What do you need? Let's figure this out together. Is there a time when money makes a business worse?
Yeah, I think it makes it. Again, the answer is yes and no, but the real answer of yes is it makes it worse if it's in the hands of someone that thinks the money is going to solve the problem, because the money doesn't solve the problem. I think it sometimes deflates the what you need to focus on. And that's scary. So I think, we have plenty of money in the bank, so we take the foot off the gas on things that are really important. And I think it happens to everyone. It's kind of, I heard an analogy recently, and spare the next 90 seconds. I think you'll really enjoy it. It's about the cat and the cheese. And if you're the mouse and and you see cheese, you run at a certain speed. If you see a cat, you run at a certain speed. If you have cheese and a cat, you run 10 times faster because you have motivation to get something and you have someone chasing you. And I think everybody needs cat and cheese. They need that. And this was scientifically done with a spring, and we'll not get into it, but I'm constantly now sharing, like, do I have enough cheese to chase? And is there a cat? I don't need to be feared, but I just need to know that I'm moving that direction, because something like, I would say Elon Musk's, his cat is, he thinks the planet's going to die. His cheese is, he wants to habitate another planet. I mean, those are two big things, right?
Yeah.
I think it's important. Yeah.
I like saying that everyone has a ghost. They're either being chased or chasing. The question, who's chasing who? It's a chip on the shoulder. The parent that didn't believe in you, the English teacher that said you were stupid, the coach that said you'd never amount to anything. And the challenge, though, from my seat, is that eventually, unless you really understand that it's a cat and it's cheese, like it's a game, like the most evolved leaders that I know, they get it and they actually have fun with it. Like, okay, you don't think I can do this? I got you. But if you don't, if they haven't realized that they're being chased and what's chasing them,
Yeah.
they become neurotic
Uh,
a-holes. I mean,
yeah.
like, and it's like, what is your problem, man?
Yeah.
I like leaders who have figured it out,
There's a
some gamesmanship.
there's a book called Mastering Fear. I was just looking it up on Audible, and my favorite quote in the book is, "The lion's not going to eat you." And the moment you get comfortable with the lion not eating you, it's not like you just say, you don't worry about anything. You just know the lion may get really close, but it's not going to eat you. It's going to be okay. And the more calm you are through that, you've got to be resilient. You've got to push. You've got to think strategy. But the clearer you are, the better off. And I read that book because I thought the lion was going to eat me at one point. Well, I didn't say maybe that, but I was worried, and I was like, why am I so fearful right now?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I shouldn't be fearful.
Horrible thing. And
then I learned to let it go.
Night, if you're like me, you wake up in the middle of the night, you're hurt. I've been going to a thing called Gathering of Titans. You should talk to the class.
I'd love to. Yeah.
It's an entrepreneurial conclave. We've been getting together for 22 years now. It was a 3-year program sponsored by MIT Magazine and Entrepreneurs Organization, EO.
Yeah.
Apply to get in. At the end of 3 years, you graduated. They gave you a certificate. We went to Vern Harnish, who was the person who started it, a friend of mine, and said, we want to keep going. And I was like, nope, it's 3 years. So we gave him a Rolex that said, thanks from our class. We collected credit cards. We nominated a chairperson. And that was 22 years now. So we've grown up together. And at one point, maybe 10 years ago, I was having anxiety attacks, and I was waking up in the middle of the night, and like I couldn't catch my breath, and I didn't know what was happening, and it was just completely irrational. My subconscious had me. And I remember asking the class, like in front of everyone, has this ever happened to anyone? Can you raise your hand if this has happened? 75% of the class raised their hand, and no less than 10 people came up to me later and said, I got rushed to the hospital. I thought I was having a heart attack. So anxiety that, what is it? Like, am I going to get eaten by that lion is so real for entrepreneurs. And I think that, the way I define entrepreneurship is if you fail, the bank comes and takes your house. So, Laszlo will have something to say about this.
Yeah. When I get to the stage where I get worried about something, because I still do have moments of like, wow, I'm not sure what the path is. I can't see the path, and you're not going to always see the path. The tunnel will be dark. Is I always remind myself, 99% of the things we worry about don't happen. So if you're a betting person, I'll take that bet. I'll throw a worry on the table and say, do you want the over or under? It's going to happen or not happen. And I bet you I'll win if I just say it's not going to happen and you take it's going to happen. I'll probably actuarially, you'll eventually win because something will happen. But most things don't.
Yeah. So, all the research about people that live to 100 years old and what is your number one regret, every single time it's, I wish I'd worried less because it didn't happen, but it robbed me of the moment that I could have had. And it is such a valuable lesson. And if I could hypnotize everyone in my life, including myself, to do that, like, it's hard to do.
But it's at least a reminder. That's a good reminder.
So let me ask you some, I'll ask you some macro questions, and I'll give you some rapid fire questions.
Sure.
Is there a trend right now that you think CEOs, you're seeing it, but CEOs are underestimating?
Underestimating.
It's going to have a bigger impact on the world than people think it is.
What are they underestimating? I mean, I know what some of them are overestimating. I'm trying to think of underestimating. I mean, the overestimating is I really do believe they think this AI wave is going to change everything. And I think it's it's oversold right now, and I feel like I have enough valid evidence to say it's a methodology to assist businesses, and it will change things. No different than the internet changed physical ways of doing business to doing things online. But I think they think it's going to increase profitability and decrease costs so much that everybody's going to win. I think certain industries will, and certain ones they just there'll be impacts, but not so grand. So that's my opinion.
Is that the economist in you saying that?
That's
the investor. Is it
that's
investor?
No, that's the person that watched the internet being birthed and watched everyone overblow it then and go, wow, I'm hearing the same story all over again. Now, granted, I see the value of what the internet does, but I talk to people that are very involved with AI. And when I ask them, the pointed question is like, what problem are you solving? How are you implementing it? And show me some ROI. And they're like, there's a little bit of that moment of, we'll get there. And I'm like,
yeah,
all right, I get it, but I still don't see 100% of it. So, yeah.
I was in, I have these Flourish Advisor boards, which are CEO roundtables. They meet virtually. And recently, an operator, the operator seat of the 6, said, we're really seeing some incredible things from AI right now. And you couldn't, it was like all of a sudden everyone's like, what? You present on it? Because the operators are from the show me state. They don't take any BS. It's like, I don't believe any of it. So when an operator says, actually, we're getting some stuff happening here, everyone wants to hear about it. When visionaries like me say, it's going to change everything, people are like, bah, 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 bah. Okay. So that's the thing they're overestimating. You think it's something they might be underestimating?
I think they're underestimating that they better implement it or they're going to be in trouble. The ones that are so pessimistic, I do believe, like, if you don't look at your business and be realistic to know that it's going to affect one person's business different than it's going to affect yours. It's not a unilateral change for everyone, that you better like be on board, because either you will be, I think Ashton Kutcher said this at a conference that I was at, and he goes, eventually we are all going to be AI enabled. Every person, and the difference between you and someone else will be, did they AI enable themselves?
Yeah.
Did they? Yeah. So
it makes sense. It's there's plenty of analogies there.
Yeah.
Okay. A little bit of a pivot.
Yeah.
Tell me what failure looks like for you. Like if from your seat, with all you know, how should a CEO think about failure differently than they do?
Think about it, or how do I see it? Like, how do they? So I
see it.
Yeah.
I try to get mostly CEOs to listen to this, or CEOs.
So, yeah, I think so. Failure is these lessons that you get to pile onto yourself so that you can do better next time. So that's how I look at failures. I get upset with myself when I fail 2 or 3 times at the same thing and go, why am I not learning? What's my roadblock that I need to break through? So not to be afraid of failure, not to want to fail, but to at least accept failure as part of the process. It's miss the shot so that you can take it again until perfect it, learn from others. And now I feel like I can recognize a better opportunity and have less chance of failure. Still, there's opportunities of failure, but it's still, I say no a lot more now because, and I'm not always right, but I say no a lot more now because I feel like I take those lists of failures and say, that is a high likelihood to happen again. May not happen, but why go down that road when there's too many identifiers that are going to put me in that position? So let's go a different direction. And
one of my friends and mentors, a coach, I once said, my instinct is to do this, Rich. This is Rich Hill, a buddy of mine. He goes, is that your instinct or your intuition? And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, they're both really important, but they're different. Your instinct is what sees a stick on the ground and your brain says snake and it keeps you alive. Your intuition is the sum of all your experiences. So
I like
when
that.
you hear yourself think, my instinct thinks this, to stop and see if you're making decisions from fear or from wisdom.
Yeah.
It's really profound, because what you just said was, it's wisdom. You've
Yeah.
run a lot of experiments. You might be afraid you're going to make the same mistake again, but your intuition is like, this is a pattern. I've been around the block a few times. This feels like a no for me. Now I could do some digging and figure out why, but this is intuition.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I 100% agree. And I never go back and say, was I right? Because that takes effort to go, some of those things you can figure out fairly easily, but others you can't, because no one has a crystal ball. So you don't know.
What have you learned about ego in business? Like, that,
yeah, like
plenty of time.
Yeah. Oh, ego. Wow. Well, there's the ego in self, right? The thing that you're like, me against me. When I'm in the gym, I'm like, I look around and the trainer I work with, he's like, well, and I go, no, I'm fighting against me. Like, I don't care what the person next to me is doing. And he still always tries to, make it like a competition. And I'm like, I don't know, I'm competing against myself. So that's just so I think ego is important because you have to have that that I'm going there and I'm the one. It's the level of ego, I think, where is it an earned ego? Is it a ego that they're allowed to and how you portray it? Because I am a big believer that I want to enjoy this journey with the people. And when I see egos that are out of control, I don't care if they're really smart. It's just not enjoyable to be around them. It bothers my nervous system. So I think there's an ego level that is a healthy ego that helps you kind of transcend and grow and see things and enjoy the process. And then there's ego where it's just, I call it childhood trauma that someone needs to throw out their ego because they haven't solved something of their past. And I just say, you know what? I look at them and say, best of luck to you. I just don't need to solve that for you. And if you need that ego to feel right, then go at it on your own or find other people. And they may be incredibly successful, but at the same time, it doesn't work with me.
Yeah, there's some more things you say no to, like you're in a project yourself. You don't need to be working on someone else. I like that.
Yeah. It's the circle, as a friend of a friend said, your tent gets smaller and smaller as you get older because you allow certain people in your tent, and then you're like, there's no more room in the tent. I just don't have time for that energy or that ego or that personality that's going to disrupt things. It's no different than in small groups. In my YPO group, sometimes we add a person to our group and it just changes the dynamic. And sometimes you add them and it changes it in a good way, and sometimes it changes it in a really bad way. And we have to recognize those personalities.
Yeah, I like the frame. Is this giving me energy or taking energy? And it's a really good barometer for how whether I'm engaging in the right conversations, the right communities, and so some of the things I wish I'd realized much younger in life, because I've gotten pulled into a lot of drama because I thought it was giving me energy, but it was actually a total suck. Okay.
Okay. Well, there you go.
You have a follow up to that? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think you have to, rather than say, I wish it didn't happen. I think part of each of our journeys is the sum of all our experiences. And as much as some of them are painful, if we sense that we have grown as people, those experiences were necessary. And I don't think we have as much control as we think we do. So it's, I could sit there and say, your past is a lot harsher than mine, or vice versa, or compare it to someone else. We all just have this some of these experiences, and we have to be okay with knowing that that's who's made who we are. That's how we've become who we are. So
very wise. Thank you. My friend and Yoda coach John Domsky says that life is the perfect curriculum to teach you what you need to learn right now.
Yeah.
So that's a great way at looking at, that was hard, but I learned something. That was good.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Okay. So a few rapid fire questions. Let's see. One question every CEO should ask himself before taking capital.
Why are you doing it? And I have a lot of follow-up questions to that. It's like, like what is the true reason you're taking that capital? And do you know the people you're taking the capital from? Have you done the homework? What are you going to use the money for? I wish I could give you one answer. There's so many answers there, but but what are you going to use the money for is probably a big thing versus just taking capital for the sake of taking capital,
Yeah. So I think that one lesson that everyone should learn from Shark Tank is that Mark Cuban wants to know what the money's going to be used for. Like, it's like, okay, how much cost of acquisition? Like, he wants to know exactly when you pour the fuel on this fire, where is it burning? How is it burning? Or if you can't answer that question, then you can't have any money. Okay. Is there a founder you bet on over and over again? And if so, why? What is it they do differently? This might be a callback to a question you answered earlier.
I don't have one, but I do know that there's repetition. Back to the thing we talked about is recognizing repetition and knowing that the odds are best with that. I do have actually somebody in my network that I invested with and I continue to invest with, and the odds are always better with them because they just fight harder than most people. So I do have someone like that. So I've just watched the way they think on calls and the questions they ask and then their action steps after the call. And I'm like, all right, they're working harder than everybody else or smarter than everybody else. So I'm going to bet on this horse.
Yeah. They refuse to lose.
Yeah.
Is there what's the biggest, I hear so much, quiet conversation about private equity. What's the biggest myth about private equity?
Well, I think it became this popular fad to get into the private equity space. So everyone equates private equity as these the financiers that come in and they ruin industries because they don't know anything about business. And granted, if you put enough apples in a bucket, some of them are going to rot. And if you start to overfill it, some of them are going to get squashed and shouldn't be in the bucket. And I think what we've lost sight of is not every private equity firm or group is created equal. And that makes it just harder to fish through who's best to work with. I think it's very much like the dating world. There's so much top of the funnel and opportunity that now you no idea like how to pick a spouse, because it's a lot harder because there's just too much influx of opportunity to meet people. So when you do, you're like, wow, I've discovered it. I think it's being intentional, asking the right questions, and not going based on, well, my best friend used this firm or they have a reputation that I heard about. You got to really like dig deeper than that. You got to date them. Yeah.
You said something. It's kind of like picking a spouse, and I know I'm not going to pull the thread now, but that might be a future podcast. I know that's very interesting to you.
Very much so.
It's sort of a side project of partners. So, I'll put that on a shelf, and maybe we'll do a follow up because I think that'd be fascinating. Okay, last question for you, Alan. If you could tattoo one principle on every entrepreneur's arm, what would it be?
Be passionate.
Be passionate.
Awesome. Yeah. If you can't be passionate about it, in the worst times, you need to get up and say, I still want to fight. So be passionate about that thing. If you're not, I always tell myself, if business goes to shit, will I still enjoy this journey? Like, because it's going to probably have a moment, and you can't.
10.
Yeah. You're right. It's going to have, but at least if you can't get through the first moment, you're not going to get through the other 9, right? So you gotta like sit there and go, I have a perfect example is, I started a fitness business in 2004. And I remember before I wrote the check to sign the lease and the buy the equipment and everything, I was like, will I regret this on my grave to at least not do this? And I was always into fitness and I couldn't find something that fit my needs. So typical entrepreneur, let's start it. And frankly, the business net didn't make money, but I enjoyed the 8 years running it with, I didn't do the heavy lifting, but I enjoyed the process. I enjoyed the process. And I, when it was hard, I was still passionate about it because I was like, I really like this space. So.
Yeah. I don't know if you ever read the book Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. If you have, please do.
Oh,
I remember
great book.
He wrote 3 or 4 times in the book. His mantra was just period, keep period, going period. And I had written that so many times, like, just get through this. Like, you'll get through it. There's another side. Alan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really
appreciate it.
Enjoyed chatting with you. And I hope that the listeners out there listened all the way to the end, because there's so much wisdom in what you say.
Thank you.
And it's hard earned. So I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. And I look forward to coming to visit you. Chicago's not far from Green Bay, so I'll probably be out there.
Go to a Bears-Packers game.
Hey, why not? Why not? All right.
See you in the icy tundra, Alan.
Yeah, thank you.